Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Goalhorns and Fight Songs. I am Mike at Merrill4 on Twitter, and joining me again is Wes at Painted Bronco. How are you doing tonight, Wes?
Oh, pretty good. I think we got everything figured out. We shouldn't have any hiccups this episode. Hopefully not. Anyway.
Yeah, hopefully, but I mean, there's bound to be one or something with the two of us idiots running this thing.
I mean, probably. We're getting close to hockey season, so we're getting to that good time of the year.
The the best time of the year. I was just talking about it today with our sales guy and how we only have a couple more weeks left, and then the puck drops.
Yeah, then we got to make sure that we have everything in line for November because October is just around the corner. November will be here before we know it, and then we'll be looking for hotel rooms in Nashville.
Yeah, that's gonna be. I think that's why I brought it up. I was just excited to get down to Nashville and watch some hockey and actually watch the Broncos play in person.
Yep, but we're gonna wait a couple more weeks before we finish up the Western schedule. Tonight is all about St. Cloud State, the Huskies.
Yeah, we getting down to the very end of things, and St. Cloud's second to last on the list. Then they're one of the tougher teams in the conference.
Most definitely. I mean, they're gonna. It seems to be a very interesting season. I think the two teams that really might have the highest of upper handedness might be Denver and Minnesota Duluth. If we're being 100% honest with what they've brought back and where they ended up last season, they seem to have the least amount of question marks. North Dakota's kind of in that situation, but they're still making up for some key pieces that they lost in the offseason. But St. Cloud has some question marks, but they're generally a team that does compete for that somewhere between the 3 and 5 spot in the conference year in and year out. I really don't see it really being any different this year.
And they're only a couple of years removed from a number one overall seed, I believe, in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, and I mean they have a pretty generous schedule. They spend a lot of time in the state of Minnesota. They play everybody from the state at least once. They like I said, they did lose some key components. They lost Kevin Fitzgerald, who we saw play really well in 3 Ice. If anyone paid attention to that league in the summer, that was a fun league. Got to see that live, and he had the league scoring for lead for quite a bit of that season too. They lost goalie David Hrenick, Sam Henches, Seamus Donahue, Easton Bradzinski, Nolan Walker, all left to pro contracts. Joseph Lamoureux transferred to Alaska Anchorage, but they do have a transfer goalie coming in Dominic Bassi. So we'll see what he does with what is potentially an upgrade in front of him from Colorado College to St. Cloud. But everyone's got question marks. It's just a matter of being able to put all the pieces together and get the puzzle to take the shape you want it to.
Yeah, and they did lose key guys, but they still have a lot of their core group back. And I think they have a good series to start off the year to see what they have in incoming freshmen and any transfers they have. They're going to start out the same way that they started out last year with St. Thomas. This is St. Thomas's second year in the in Division One after moving up from Division Three. Did not go so well for them last year playing
No,
St. Cloud.
it certainly didn't. I mean, this series, their entire season at Division One did not go very well for them, let alone this series. As I fart around and try and get this sized more appropriately, good enough. They went 3-32-1 last year. Their only wins came from conference opponents in the CCHA. They were able to split both series with Ferris State and got their final win over Lake Superior State. This series that they did play last year, that'll be a home and home series. That first Saturday, Sunday of the month or of weekend that we're seeing a lot of people playing this year. It was a 14-2 loss the first night, they were outscored 14-2 on the weekend. They lost 12-2 and 2-0. So I think that first night We definitely saw a point where players were starting to just kind of test things out and see if they could almost coaching points. Like they're kind of taking scrimmage changes at certain points in the game when it got a little out of hand. But a little closer contest the next night. Maybe they were playing some players, giving some guys some extra ice time that might not have been the top line guys. So interesting to see what'll happen this year with St. Thomas having a full year under their belt.
I do think the first game last year was kind of a welcome to Division 1 hockey, and St. Cloud wanted to make a statement saying, "Yeah, you guys, you're not quite at our level yet." And then I think the second game was more of a let's work on things in game situations, and also playing some guys that may not have played a bunch when they got further into the year and into conference play. So there are multiple factors that played into the 2-0 score in the second game, but it's a good way for St. Cloud to start kind of an easier series until St. Thomas builds up their program, being as young as they are.
Yeah, I mean, St. Thomas does have a good coach. I believe it's still Rico Blasi, former Miami coach,
Yes.
who had Miami playing really well there for a few years. He is familiar with the teams of the NCHC as he was the Miami coach when Miami joined the NCHC. So he's kind of familiar with some of these opponents and even kind of used to building an underdog team that's able to produce on the ice. So, I think they're only going to get better the more time they spend in Division 1.
Yeah, and that helps having a coach that is experienced and was playing well. It's not like they just had some rando off the street. They have someone that's experienced for St. Thomas, but it's gonna be a tough opening weekend for them.
Oh, for sure. But St. Cloud then goes to Madison, Wisconsin to play the Badgers of the Big Ten. Let's see, what did the Badgers do last year? They went 10-24. They were swept by Lake Superior last season, St. Cloud last season. Lost in 3 games to Notre Dame in the Big Ten playoffs. Were able to win games over UMich and Minnesota when they were ranked in the top 5. So an up and down season for them. Inconsistency across the board. You can kind of tell that with a 10-24-3 record. You're not performing the way you want to be, but they were able to get wins against some pretty top ranked opponents. And they did lose a goalie. Western kind of capitalizes on them having a goalie leave their program, so they will be without Cameron Rowe this season.
In Wisconsin, they're, from what I recall, because I don't watch Big Ten hockey really anymore, but from what I recall in the past, is they're an up and down team, and like you said, the inconsistency, they just can't seem to string together series wins or even just a series of wins, whether it be a Saturday win and then a Friday win in the next series. They just don't seem to have it. And even in a conference like the Big Ten, yeah, you have Minnesota, that was a very good team, and yeah, you had Michigan, that was a very good team. But the rest of the Big Ten conference is not very strong. So to only get 10 wins for your whole season is that's not very good. But it'll be another step up for St. Cloud for the teams that they're playing um, with going into Big Ten.
I don't know if I lost you or you lost me. Oh, there you are.
There I am.
You were saying going into Big Ten is where it cut off for me.
Oh, sorry. It's saying my internet connection is unstable, kind of like me. But they're going. Let's see. They're going to be playing a team that is another level up in ability with being a Big Ten team as opposed to the CCHA teams that St. Thomas. But yeah, the caliber of Big Ten play that Wisconsin, or their record for the caliber of teams that they were playing in the Big Ten are not great. So I think that should be a fairly easy weekend too for St. Cloud.
They also kind of do this little step up to their early season non-conference schedule that we saw. I think it was it Denver that had an easy ramp up?
I believe so. I believe it was Denver.
Or was it North Dakota? It was one of those two, I think. Or it could have even been Nebraska. I know it was in one of the last few that we did. It's the only reason I remember it. But I can't remember exactly who it was. But this will probably be this next series here. They're home for Minnesota State. I think that's going to probably be their toughest non-conference scheduled opponent, if I had to guess, amongst the 5 that they're playing. Because we know Minnesota
it could be argued.
I mean, Minnesota State did win their conference last year in pretty convincing fashion. Both regular season. Now the tournament, that was a little bit iffy. There was a controversy as far as the final game went, where players had to come back after a half hour. They had an 18-game winning streak before finally losing in the NCAA finals to Denver. And these two teams split their series last season. So, it's a pretty nice step up once again. This team went 38-6. A lot of that was due to their goaltender, who's not coming back this season. He took a pro contract, I believe, at the AHL level, I want to say.
I believe it was the AHL, yeah.
But I'm not 100% sure. I mean, I don't follow every team in the country. There's too many of them. You're lucky you get what you get, honestly. As far as what I know about other teams that aren't.
Yeah, I think it was AHL, but then he got busted for.
Well, he got busted for something beforehand,
like steroids or something.
And it would have. I think it's suspension. Like, it was weird how they worded it, because I think he would have been able to play this fall, but instead he decided to sign a 2-year AHL contract with the Toronto Marlies. So yes, his suspension does not carry over, from what I've understood. So that is where he is now. AHL with the Marlies. So I mean, that could be potentially something that Minnesota State has to deal with, switching goaltenders. But there's a lot of schools that are going to be less experienced in the goaltender position this year.
There's still going to be a high-powered team, though, and I think it's Mike Hastings is the coach down in Mankato, and he does a good job of reloading. And I've thought this for the past few years, where okay, Mankato, they had a good year. It was a fluke. And then they kept winning. And they kept winning. And now it's to the point where it's, okay, this is a pretty good team, and they're going to reload. They're going to be winning the CCHA, they winning the WCHA when they're in the WCHA. They do have a little bit less competition, but they proved last year that it doesn't really matter. They can get to the national championship game even playing the weaker schools.
Oh, 100%. They do go down a little bit as far as skill level before the start of NCHC play, and you could think of that as a positive or a negative, however you want to. But they have a home-and-home series with Bemidji State. The series was swept last year by St. Cloud. And Bemidji's a team that, we don't have a lot of positives to say about them. They were pretty much 50-50 last year, 19-20. They did take part. They were able to make their conference finals. They were the other team in that Bemidji State Minnesota State game that ended in some controversy with a goal going under the net later, about a half hour later, reviewed and overturned. So they had to go back out and restart the game, eventually re-losing the game to Minnesota State. So, a team that I think they have a lot to prove amongst themselves of, yes, we made it to our conference final. We competed against one of the better teams last year in Minnesota State, but they've yet to put together really much of a full season. But I think they have room to grow. Really not following the CCHA, but I would like to see them be at least as a non-conference opponent, a bit tougher opponent for some of these NCHC schools who put them on their schedule.
And they're not very far removed from they were part of the, let's see, it would have been 29, was it 2021? It might have just been last year when we had when all five Minnesota schools made it into the NCAA tournament, and I believe Bemidji they lost to St. Cloud. I want to say I think they might have made the Frozen Four, or they were in the mix. I know that much. So they had a solid year a few years ago, but then I think it might have been 2019 because then uh, their goalie went to North Dakota after that year, and it kind of went sideways. But they're still a competitive team, and they with that home and home, as we talked about before, Bemidji, there's not a whole lot around there, so it's going to be a raucous crowd, especially for a team like St. Cloud, who's one of the better teams in the nation. I do think Bemidji, they can be a sneaky good team. It's just they don't get the recognition playing in the conference that they do.
Yeah, they. I mean, everyone in on the schedule has a chance to be a pretty good team. I think maybe the weakest team that they play all year will be St. Thomas, who are still acclimating to the Division One level. But it's a solid schedule. I kind of like the way they have it laid out. The trap of Bemidji could be just overlooking them to the start of NCHC play with defending champion Denver, as they go out to Denver to play and enter the world that is the elevation of Mile High City. Denver was 31-9-1 last year. Most of those wins coming at home. They did sweep the one series that they played last year in Denver. Minnesota or St. Cloud and Denver, they're two teams that always battle each other hard. They will play each other twice this year, though.
Yeah, and that'll be both those series will be really good series. That's every team has to open up with somebody, and it just St. Cloud kind of got stuck opening conference play with Denver. Uh, that probably the worst way to open up your season. The toughest way to open up your conference schedule is by going to Denver, a place where we've just harped on this every schedule. They didn't lose until February last year at home. So yeah, you have some good opponents under your belt. You've played some good hockey, but I think they're probably going to have one loss going into that weekend with Mankato, maybe a second one with Bemidji. I could definitely. It's a possibility of a sweep, though, for Denver over St. Cloud because that's a tough way to start your conference play.
Yeah, I mean, going to Denver is never fun. Even Western, they were able to get out to a couple early leads, but Denver is a team that will not give up, especially in their own building, and they can score in bunches. I mean, it'll be interesting to see how well that offense maintains and fills the roles that were left behind by some of their top players. But it'll be one of those good contests, and St. Cloud really has to be careful to not overlook their non-conference schedule for that one, and just take the steps before that to get themselves ready to play that series.
They have to treat every, other than maybe the St. Thomas series, treat the remaining series as if they're playing Denver and prepare like they're playing Denver. Now they should do that for every game that they play, but St. Thomas is a little bit like starting off with Long Island or starting off with a Canadian school. In in my opinion, it's just a kind of a nice little FCS school for Alabama to beat up on. Uh, and then after Denver, they come home for a weekend, but they take on your Western Michigan Broncos.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a 1-2 punch to start the season. The NCHC portion of the season, anyway. Western is coming in 26, 12, and 1. They were ranked 6th at the end of the season. Western actually played really well against St. Cloud last year. They took 8 of 12 points. We swept them here in Kalamazoo. And but we were, and we had a shutout win in St. Cloud.
Yeah, that's the thing with the NCHC teams is they're all going to be pretty close games. No, the season series are going to be pretty close no matter what. I do think it helps that uh, St. Cloud gets them at home for the first time this year as opposed to going to Kalamazoo, especially after having to go play in Denver. Uh, they I don't know what to think about this series. I just think it's going to be a good series, but I don't know what to
I mean,
make of it.
it'll be interesting to see where Western's at that point in the season with the question marks they have. It'll be interesting to see where St. Cloud is at also. It should be a pretty good matchup. These two teams generally match up pretty well against each other. Even though they have some pretty easy games in the early part of the season, their travel schedule is not very great. Quite a few home and homes. They go away to Denver, home for Western Michigan, and then right back to the altitude in Colorado, going to Colorado College.
Yeah, I did notice that, and it's a little bit of a reprieve. They don't have some of the gauntlet schedules like we've seen other teams have to deal with, but St. Cloud they're traveling quite a bit now. Granted, a lot of it is in state. Yeah, that's rough. You get used to the altitude. Maybe you come back, you're at home, you're used to that, and then 2 weeks later, boom, you're back in the altitude again. Uh, that could be maybe a little bit of a sneaky series where they could drop one to Colorado College.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Colorado College was a team that struggled last year. They lost all 4 games to St. Cloud and pretty much battled Miami for last place in the NCHC all season. They do lose their primary starting goaltender to St. Cloud, but they have Matt Vernon, who's more than capable of stepping in and fulfilling that role.
And I know we did talk about that when we covered CC's schedule that um, St. Cloud does have a goalie that knows them, so that might work into their favor. But we also don't know. Uh, we also don't know how well he's going to play because was it just Colorado College struggled that much last year, or was it some goalie play? What does he do with a better team in front of him? Um, so there's going to be some question marks with this series.
Yeah, as I die over here. I was not feeling great the weekend, and my throat took a beating, and talking this much is not helping it. But yeah, definitely, I agree with everything you said. It's going to be a decent battle. It'll be interesting to see where both teams are. A good test for Colorado College early in the year. And I think they'll be looking forward to that next series.
Yeah, their next series, they're coming back home, but they get North Dakota, and like every Minnesota team, that is a big rivalry game. Everybody in Minnesota does not like North Dakota, uh, so that should be a really fun series to kick off December for them.
Yeah, it was a pretty interesting series last year. I think St. Cloud had a big win in the first game, but then North Dakota came right back and won the follow up game. and it was just, I want to say it was like 8-1, and it was just a beatdown kind of in the second period by St. Cloud. But North Dakota is one of those teams that always knows how to respond on a weekend. That's why they play 2 games on a weekend. You got to win them both. And those
and
two teams always play hard, and it's a battle every time.
and both teams know already by this point in the year, especially with the schedules that they've played, every game matters, and they're trying to battle for the points for the Penrose, and this game can make or break. You look at last year with Denver and North Dakota splitting the Penrose. When you're playing the top teams, it's it's going to be a battle because you lose one game that could cost you the Penrose, that could cost you the number one seed. So they're going to fight for it as opposed to playing a Miami or a Colorado College or even Omaha.
Yeah, every game counts, and these are, you have to really fight for the games when you're either close to someone in the standings, or win the games that you're supposed to win throughout the year. This one's one of those games where they're going to be closer in the standings than it as more so than it will be like a 1 versus 8 seed type situation, which could be the case of their next series away at Miami. Miami was 7-27-2 last year. These two teams did not play each other, or did not play at Miami last year. They played in St. Cloud, so that'll be a return series there, and they'll actually play each other twice this year.
And there is that pattern that you're starting to see now with the schedule and why St. Cloud doesn't have quite that gauntlet. They play Denver and Western, but then they get Colorado College, then they have North Dakota, then they have Miami. So they're getting a little bit of that reprieve in there where they could end up being a trap series, and those trap games where they let down a little bit after playing Denver and Western, where they after they play North Dakota. Uh, but we'll see what Miami has this year, if they improve a little bit or what the case may be. But I could see it being a little bit of a trap game for them, or trap series.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of those series where it's right at the end of the first half of the season. Guys kind of got tired legs. They're looking forward to that break. And they get a pretty sizable break, too, coming up. They don't play a holiday series. Their next series will be in 2023 when they take on Minnesota.
Yeah, they do have an exhibition game against Manitoba. That's just kind of, they're just get their legs back under them a little bit after the holiday break. But yeah, going in, going in and having, I think
It's a home and home.
yeah, it's a home and home with the Gophers, who they were a really solid team last year too. It's going to be a nice little welcome back to hockey for them in a tough opponent. At least they only have to drive it's probably about an hour and a half from Mariucci to the Herb Brooks Arena. So they don't have to go very far, but they're still going to have to get up for the game and get their legs going. But let's see, I think that might also be Minnesota's first game out of the break. Let me look.
I think so. It's pretty early in the second half of the season, so I doubt many people are going to be playing. Oh, I know Western's playing, I think, the weekend before that, or the week before that, because they have the GLI this year.
Let's see. Don't care about the football team right now because it's not Saturday.
Oh, I have not been scrolling down. Been trying not to die.
Let's see. The Gophers do have a game against Bemidji on December 31st. So they will have a little bit more of a competitive game than what St. Cloud's going to have, but both teams are still going to be trying to get their legs under them and have a really tough matchup right out of the gate.
Yeah, that's going to be a pretty good matchup. I mean, Minnesota is a team that played really well last year. They were able to secure the regular season Big Ten championship at the very end of the year with a little help from Notre Dame. Uh, they did make the finals in the Big Ten tournament. They lost to U of M, which in this state is the University of Michigan. And they split their series last year with St. Cloud. They jumped.
Yeah, it's going to be it's just going to be a fun series, tough series for both teams, I think.
And then they jump right back into NCHC play, this time hosting Colorado College. A team that, like we said, is struggled in years past. They're going to be shooting on a goalie they know pretty well. As much as traveling as they did and as difficult as the travel was for St. Cloud in the first half of the season, it looks like it's a little easier in the second half of the season. They don't make too many far trips. And most of the difficult teams come to them.
Yeah, they have a nice little home stretch, and even the Minnesota series, like I said, it's an hour and a half home for Colorado College. They do the Colorado back-to-back series when Denver comes on the January 20th and 21st, and then the first series of the year against UMD up in Duluth, and that's, again, it's, I don't know, maybe 2.5 hours from St. Cloud. It's also not a very far drive, so they're still somewhat close to home. But now is kind of the time where you don't really want to play UMD, because this is when the pace starts picking up for them.
I'll tell you what, dude. The season series between these two teams last year might have been the best regular season series amongst any team last year, or any conference series last year.
I think, including the playoffs, I think 4 out of the 6 games went to overtime.
I think so.
I believe that was the case. And it was just two heavyweight teams punching back and forth.
And all 4 games in the regular season mattered because they were trying to set up that home ice. And we saw in the 2 displaced games, because you guys had that weird series where you had to play one Tuesday there and one Tuesday at, I don't know if they were split like that, but you guys had to play 2 Tuesday games amongst other games.
Yeah, it was really, really weird. I think that was because of
it was the COVID relief. Yeah, I think there was a COVID outbreak because of Colorado College, which messed everything up. But yeah, that was one of the better series of all of last season, honestly. And it came down to the wire. St. Cloud was able to earn home ice and take the 4 seed in the playoffs, but it didn't really matter as UMD came back and swept the first 2 games of the playoff series and moved on, eventually winning the NCHC.
Yeah, and that was St. Cloud did not have Rennick. He was out for some health-related issues. I can't remember exactly what it was, but they didn't have him for the playoff series, which I do think hurt them. I know the game 1, I don't think it really would have mattered, because being at both games, I watched it. It wouldn't have mattered who they put in net. St. Cloud they were awful. They were horrible. Game 2, though, they might have been able to steal that one, because that did go to overtime. And yeah, I was biting my nails up in the stands, hoping and praying that UMD would win, and they did. But it was just a fun series to watch all year. And again, they tend to play later in the year when the first series happens, and then we know, just to jump ahead, we've talked about it, that's their kind of rivalry at the end of the year for the last series. So it should be fun at this point. This should be one of the better matchups of that weekend.
Oh yeah, anytime those 2 teams are on the ice, if it would be my backup series to watch if when those 2 teams play each other. I mean, Western's always going to be the series I want to pay the most attention to, but that one's one that I'll definitely keep track of, and sometimes even watch the last couple periods if it's still going when I get home, which is what I did last year.
Hmm.
They're home against Miami, a team that in their one series last year they outscored 19-1. A pair of just lopsided wins for St. Cloud, 11-1 and 8-0. I don't know that that's
Yeah.
necessarily going to be the case again this season. I hope Miami's able to take some steps forward and improve. I mean, they do have some solid players. There's some good players on every single one of these teams for sure. But they've got to find a way to be more competitive in the conference and not take, for lack of a better term, ass whoopings like that on a regular basis, especially that late in
Yeah.
the season.
Yeah, they're good at that, and I don't know. I just think St. Cloud, they're gonna enjoy that one. Yeah, there's not much else to say about it, especially at home for St. Cloud, and we covered them. And then they have that little quote unquote easier series, and then they travel up to Grand Forks and get to play North Dakota up there this time, which, as we've said and as we've heard, is maybe the toughest place to play uh, in college hockey because their arena is massive, the people there are crazy, and this is all that they have. So that's another really fun series at the end of the year, or towards the end of the year, that's going to matter even more as the standings have kind of tightened up and teams have separated to the top three, middle three, and then bottom two.
Yeah, it'll be. I mean, it's hard to say that it's one of the toughest places to play. I think that's been one of the places that every player has said they love going to because of the facilities there. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
yes, maybe it's more like playing at a full AHL arena or a full ECHL arena as opposed to a standard college arena. Um, yes, they do have a fan base that produces a solid atmosphere, but I would say that even though Lawson is smaller, I think more people hate coming to Western purely because of the student section and the fan base than hate going there because they enjoy the amenities that arena provides them. But
That could be true.
but yes, it'll be another one of those heavyweight contests that we're used to seeing in the NCHC. One that'll mean a ton, being as it is, the third weekend before the end of the season, and points are going to be at a premium, and you've got to really fight to get them.
Yeah, I got nothing else to say.
It is one of the few times that St. Cloud will have to travel away in back-to-back weekends because they're doing a lot of home and away, home and away, home and away. But these 2 weekends here near the end of the season are away, going from North Dakota back home for classes basically, and then hitting the road to Omaha for their one series against Omaha. Um, Omaha actually kind of struggled a little bit against Nebraska last year, and they were swept in the late season series there, from at least what my notes say. Now, whether or not that's true, I don't remember.
Um, let's see. I had it up. Omaha. Now I sound like Peyton Manning. Yes, they were swept in Omaha by the Mavericks there. So that I think that was a bit of a surprise at the end of the year too, seeing a team like St. Cloud, especially when they were in the fight for home ice, to be swept by Omaha. And again, late in the year, Omaha's a team you never know what you're going to get from them, and they're so inconsistent. But they're right in that they're about the sixth seed every year, just not quite to the level of the top five, not low enough at the level of CC in Miami. Um, so that could be kind of a tough series for them, and it's right around the same time that they got swept last year.
Yeah, and Omaha, I mean, they do lose their starting goaltender in Seville, and we've mentioned that pretty much every time we've talked about a schedule. But I think these things are worth repeating, especially when every schedule has been a significant time away from the other one, or we're talking about different teams at different times. Um,
Hmm.
so it bears repeating that they will be breaking in a new goaltender. They have probably one of the easier non-conference schedules, as we've mentioned. But at that point in the season, everyone's kind of been beaten down enough and understands that we're in a push for or to the end of the season. We've really got to get as many points as we can get, especially going into the final weekend and what has become a rivalry weekend. And that means that St. Cloud will once again be facing off with Minnesota Duluth, this time in St. Cloud. And we literally just discussed this like 2-3 weekends ago because for whatever reason they decided to schedule both of their games with Minnesota in probably the worst time for them and the best time for Minnesota, because this is when they become this juggernaut on the ice and they take things seriously and they turn it up a notch. They go from third gear to fourth gear. They don't quite hit fifth just yet. They're really getting close to making the shift into fifth, but they kind of save that extra gear for the playoffs and the national title push. So it really makes things difficult for St. Cloud to save these games for the end of the season like they do. But it'll be another heavyweight contest, and as soon as the Western Series that against Miami that weekend is done, I will be tuning into these games for sure.
And the thing though is St. Cloud and UMD, they with how good UMD is at the end of the year, this series has always been one we've actually struggled at a little bit last year. Well, it was such a close series, but I've gone to a couple series up there in St. Cloud when UMD's played, and we'd get our asses kicked. It wouldn't be close, or the team wasn't playing, and for whatever reason, especially in St. Cloud, the team hasn't played well in this particular series. So I think it is one to keep an eye on, especially because, like last year, I think it's going to determine who gets home ice advantage, and I can see um, just being a 4-5 matchup again, like it was last year.
And we'll kind of get a better look at this series. I don't know if it'll be next week or the week after. I think we might push back. I think we might take a break next week because you won't be here.
That is correct. I
So
I do have a work thing.
we might push back the second half of the rosters to the 20th, and we'll get a better look at the matchup that will be Minnesota Duluth versus St. Cloud, as both of those rosters will be in that episode. And then we'll wrap up the schedule run throughs with Western Michigan on September 27th, if I know how dates work. But let me double check because
Yeah,
I am
you
not
are correct,
I'm
sir.
not a human calendar. So
You
yeah,
are correct.
and that'll lead us right into the weekend. So that might be a little bit longer of an episode because we'll break down the Western schedule and maybe do some pick'ems for the first week. Some of those will be exhibition games. Some of those will be full non-conference weekends, and we'll kind of play it by ear. But it'll be a fun time. I'm really looking forward to the season. I'm looking forward to getting back to talking about actual hockey games instead of sitting here playing hypotheticals and repeating the same information week after week. So that'll be fun
It'll be
and good times.
it'll be a lot of fun, and it's before we know what it is going to be here. It seems like it's taken a while, but it also seems like it's flown by the time to get here.
Yes, 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 yes. But once it gets here, I mean, there's gonna be a lot to look forward to um, this upcoming season, both on the ice and off the ice, personal and as this podcast goes. So it'll be a fun ride. I hope that there's going to be a bunch of people here to go along, take the ride with us. Make sure to, if you are one of those people who feel so inclined to go on this adventure with us, hit like on the YouTube channel, follow along here on the Twitch channel. I do play some video games every once in a while, so just be careful of when you're clicking onto the thing. You might be seeing me suck at video games. Generally, if it's not Tuesday, or if it's Tuesday, we'll be talking hockey. So that's the day to look for these episodes. Granted, I'm down to talk hockey any day of the week, so if you happen to jump in and I'm playing video games and you want to talk some puck, let's talk puck. There'll be more personal news coming as the year goes on. Mike and I are planning a trip to Nashville that we hope to either live tweet about or maybe post some videos from as we're hanging out in the car for 8 hours each way. So follow along on our Twitter handles, which are on the screen. I'm at Painted Bronco. He's at Maro04.
And if you don't hear from us at all, Wes and I got sick and tired of each other and just beat the living hell out of each other.
I mean, you should at least hear from one of us, because I might just kick Mike out of the car and drive home by myself. It's fine.
He'll just open up the door. I'll just put the child lock on.
I really feel like it's going to be more trains, planes, and automobiles than a horror movie. But let's not destroy my car, okay? Like, I'm not.
We'll try. No promises.
But yeah, keep all that in mind, and I hope you enjoyed the episode. And I'm gonna go rest my voice a little bit, because I was not expecting it to be this rough going into this episode, but it'll be good by the time the season gets here. So until next time, make sure to throw the puck on net, because when the puck on net, good things happen, like goal horns and fight songs. Have a good one.